So I saw this video from Senator Elizabeth Warren on YouTube. She apparently has a YouTube channel. Who knew? And it is called The Three Myths of Inflation. And I, I couldn't help myself to at least put a rebuttal out there to some of the stuff she's putting on her YouTube channel about inflation. So let's set the record straight. First of all, let me go through her three myths about inflation. Her first one is that companies share in the pain when it comes to inflation. Okay. Her second one is the market will correct price gouging on its own. Price gouging. The third one is there are enough rules to prevent price gouging. Now, I hear this word all the time, this price gouging that's going on. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen at all, but this isn't the cause of inflation. It's mind boggling to me. And I'm going to go through and do a rebuttal on this because it's just plain false. Yes, inflation was impacted by the pandemic, the war, the supply chain, all things that Senator Warren pointed out. But she always goes back to this price gouging thing and the need for, of course, more government. And she pointed out four companies that she sees as the worst offenders, or at least the ones that she put in her video. One was Kroger, another was Chevron, another was Hershey, and another was Tyson. And she took Tyson to town, basically, or to the slaughterhouse over their price gouging. Now, let's look at things that impact the cost of the chicken that we buy. And admittedly, I researched because I just recently did an option play on Tyson, but as I went down through it, they're not an organization that I would suspect they're price gouging. They're not even a very good stock, which again I'll get to here in a minute. But she went after him, and what's causing Tyson to increase their price of chicken? One is the chicken feed is up 50%. Gas prices, they got to transport the chickens to the slaughterhouse and so there's a lot of supply chain issues that regardless of the supply chain that has to do with China. So the price of gas, we all know, has gone up. We're all paying more for gas. And don't beat up on Chevron yet. I've got to cover that one too. Packaging up 20%. There was the avian flu that caused the death of chickens. There's also a 3-time increase in CO2, which is what they use in the slaughterhouse to stun chickens. So, so there's things in their supply chain completely, regardless of what I believe to be the supply chain that Senator Warren is talking about. So she says that Tyson has doubled their profits. I didn't see it. And she talked about CEOs and money-grubbing investors. And those money-grubbing investors are the ones that are, putting money into your pensions so that you can retire, that you're investing in. These are investable companies. And then in addition to that, she talks about this price gouging thing that says basically that, a company like Kroger, they said, well, we have competition, but they own the competition across the street. Well, there's competition even for within food categories. So if we're looking at Tyson chicken, If chicken gets too high, you probably go to something else that's cheaper. Pork, for instance, is at the moment cheaper than chicken prices. Um, so you know, she in essence talks in this video about the four biggest um, meat packing firms, and that they, 1977, uh, four of the largest had 25% of the market, and now they have 82% of the market. And we'll get back to that here in just a second, too. And then the third thing with regards to there are rules to prevent price gouging, and she basically is going through and gets to the actual reason for her video, which is she wants more money for the government. It's basically saying capitalism without rules is theft. And, the FTC can't enforce the laws because they lack the resources, and therefore they need another $1 billion in order to make sure we get these, protect us from those greedy companies. So Warren's solution, as I mentioned, $1 billion in funding. Give the FTC power to investigate excessive prices during market shocks. It stops companies from hiding behind inflation and requires public companies to be transparent about pricing strategies. It's so unbelievable that she would go through and point out these three things as the reason for inflation, and with regards to price gouging as kind of the central theme. So what are the real problems here? Well, the problem is, and always has been, regulation and government spending. So why don't we have competition for these four packing firms? Well, because of regulations that are out there that are a barrier to any new company coming in and competing against the four largest. Just in expenses alone, if you ever research some of the regulations on companies and what it costs them, look at the baby formula thing. There was something like what they were spending, how many thousands of hours that these companies spend so that they can make baby formula. Nobody else can, spend that time doing that much government stuff, but it's to keep it safe, and so you have the FDA and you have the USDA already in there with regards to keeping us safe in our food supply chain. But what it does is that the exact thing that she's complaining about, we don't have, more packing firms because of consolidation. Well, there's no way a new company would be able to enter that market with the amount of regulation it takes to get in it. Now, one of the things I suggest, and I'll put a link to it below, is Representative Massey, Thomas Massey from Kentucky. And you go in about 25 minutes and 8 seconds into it and just listen to what's happening in the supply chain. He can't basically slaughter a cow and sell it to his neighbor because the government's got to get involved, make sure it's safe. So, things that just are nonsense that we do from a regulatory standpoint is just, it's nonsensical. But everybody's got to be safe, and people run around and just in case, type of thing. Well, you're never going to be safe and obviously from the problems that they've had in baby formula. But anyway, that's the first thing. Regulation, preventing entry into things just raises the cost of things. In order to comply with regulations, it costs a lot of money. And only a large company could afford to, you got to have some economies, although I'm not a strong believer in economies of scale, but you've got to have some economies there in order to be, say, okay, I've got to spend $500,000 a year just on regulatory issues. that's a barrier to an entrepreneur entering a market like that. But it used to be, we had butchers and, but we don't have those anymore, or not as many as what we used to have. Anyway, and you got to remember they're regulated locally, they're regulated by the state, they're regulated by the federal government. And so all these players get in and they all help increase the prices of things. So where does inflation actually come from? Well, it comes from government spending. So when we went through and her solution being $1 billion in funding, to overlook these greedy gouging companies, just is not where the this is where the inflation is coming from, is $1 billion more for government to do more safety things. And so what happens when you do that? The prices increase, right? More regulation, more I've got to comply with this. And so what we have, and we've created this monster, and some people are mad at me because I talk about, you're getting too political. Well, it's because the government is so large now that you can't do anything without it. So the regulatory things, they're $31 trillion in debt right now. And adding to $31 trillion, it's only $1 billion. Come on. I'd like to have $1 billion. I'm sure you would too. But 31 trillion in debt, and we're trying to add more to it. And the debt is what causes the inflation because of the unfunded spending that's happening. And then the Federal Reserve has to come in and, create more money in order to fund this $31 trillion in debt that we have. So this is what inflation is. It has nothing to do with companies that are gouging customers. And so this is just ridiculous. It's kind of like, don't look over here because the government's really your friend. Look over here. Look at these guys gouging prices. It's kind of like when President Biden was basically saying, look at these oil companies and things of that sort. It's nuts. Another thing that causes the way to a solution for inflation would be an intelligent energy policy. An intelligent energy policy would be to unleash oil and natural gas, things that are plentiful here in the U.S., and sell to other countries as well as ourselves. Now, I'm okay with green, but we're not there. That's 20, 30 years down the road. So in the meantime, we've got people that are going to, because of the whole Russian thing, that are going to be cold in Germany because they did stupid things like shut off their nuclear reactors. And, they taught us the way not to do it. So I'm okay with green, but I don't think that politicians, at least some politicians, are looking for a solution, because the solution is nuclear energy. It's cheap. It's clean. And so that would solve all of our energy problems. We probably ought to get on it like right now, all countries. And if we're afraid of, uranium and some of the problems that it caused, let's look into thorium. It's a potential solution out there. But regardless, there are solutions here. And, I don't believe that Senator Warren actually wants solutions. What she's looking for is more government. And all of these things which is the source of the inflation. So it's just, when I saw this 3 myths, I couldn't believe it. Price gouging, maybe like this. And so anyway, I did go back through, and let me bring up here. Let's look at Tyson. Let's see how they're killing it, in the stock market and the and their financials. Let's see, they had a net income of $3 billion on 47 billion in revenue. Profit margin of 6.48%. And you say, well, it went from 4.77% the year before, and in 2019 it was 4.67. Oh, 7.55% in 2018. And if you look at their stock price, they're not killing it. I mean, look, they're at $71. It was at $100 before. So, and just as you go through their financials, let's look at some of their statements. And more specifically, price to earnings ratio on their stock to their earnings, 6.29, 8.24. Just for grins, let's see what somebody like Apple is. Let's see, more financials from 25.4 price. There's your price gougers. Let's get them. I'd be for something like local content rules. I'm not for regulation in general, being more of a libertarian than I am anything else. But this Tyson Foods is not killing it, and they have problems within their supply chain as far as costs going up. So they're not gouging you. You look at some of the other ones that she named here. Let's look at Kroger. Kroger, another one that I wouldn't exactly call, killing it out there. Oh boy. Let's see what their financials look like. 13.78 price to earnings ratio. Let's look at their overview. Oh, wow. A 1.19% profit margin in 2021. 1.93. Okay, let's look more recent. 2%. Wow. I mean, these are thin margins. I wouldn't call what they're doing killing it out there or gouging customers for their profit. Now, what I would say, she did have a few quotes in there about things that CEOs said at their stockholder meeting. Well, of course, you're going to talk up your company. I mean, especially in this environment, we got the market's down like 30%. So, you've got to have funds. You've got to put a good light on your particular company. Another one. Let's see who else is here. Oh, Chevron. That's a favorite of some of these price gouging people. Let's look at Chevron. Okay. Yeah, they're the price gougers. Let's see what kind of... Now, they do make a lot of profit. They do. But, I think I calculated it, and it would, if they didn't take any profit, you'd get like 10 cents per gallon off of whatever you're paying now. It wouldn't be like cut in half or anything. So let's look at their margins. 10%. Well, that's certainly a lot more than, let's say, Tyson or Kroger. 2%. And when you look at their financials, 10.36 price to earnings ratio, stock price to earnings, 7.61. We saw what Apple's was. These aren't companies that are killing it. And they also went through a time period, if you'll remember, where, let's go back to the income statement for Chevron. Oh, in 2015, what's the gross profit? Minus 65%, minus 16%, minus 68%. Nobody ever talks about when they're losing money. They only talk about when they're making money. So anyway, when I see these types of things, I've always wanted to step up, and one of the reasons I put the channel together is to destroy these types of things that are out there where the real inflation doesn't come from price gouging from companies. There's a little bit of that in there, probably somewhere. I don't think it's from Tyson or Kroger, though. But most of the gouging is coming from our government, and they keep wanting to add on, and we don't need another $1 billion. So anyway, that's what I wanted to cover in this video. And remember, and especially when it comes to government, there is always a better way.